Okay, guys, welcome back. Well, I shouldn't say welcome back. He didn't go anywhere. Thanks for staying with us or joining us in the second segment. We've got all kinds of fun stuff ahead of us. This is the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Nick, he's Joe, and we are located in Eastern Ontario. Joseph is in the nation's capital in the broadcast center of conservative radio, and I'm out here on the farm in what we used to call Bunker F. Anyway, we were just going over some stuff about the budget. That was it. I'm trying to think. The train left without me, and I wasn't on it. But anyway, so I just thought we'd come back, and we want to talk about. Remind me, Joseph.
The change.org. There was a change.org.
Oh, right. Got it. Okay, let me pull that up. Change.org. Yeah, this is there's a petition, and it's the head of the petition is No Pride, No Funding for Ontario Catholic School Boards. People have been trying to defund the Catholic School Board, for God, as long as I can remember. And they're claiming now that the idea of this petition, let me just read, I'm not going to read the whole petition. I'm just going to read you two paragraphs, the opening two paragraphs, to give you a sense of what they're after. And by those, who they are is anybody opposed to two separate school systems and think that we should close down the Catholic one in favor of the public one. All right. So the opening paragraph that actually matters in all this. Whereas English language Catholic school boards are publicly funded by the province of Ontario, and whereas in 2020 only 10 of 29 Catholic boards recognized June as Pride Month, where among those 10 Catholic boards, there were challenges in using the Pride flag as a symbol for Pride Month. And I'll read you one more. And whereas Ontario cities in the 10 Catholic boards that did not recognize June as Pride Month include Toronto, Mississauga, Brampton, Hamilton, London, Windsor, Oakville, and Burlington, which are amongst the 14 largest cities in Ontario by population. It goes on, but what they want is if the Catholic school boards don't recognize Pride Month, then they should be defunded. Now, look, school boards should not get involved, in my opinion, in anything to do with virtue signaling, because that's all this pride movement is. It's a chance for people to hop on board a politically correct bandwagon, because it's not about whether people think it's okay to be gay or how to treat people who are that way or how not to treat them or anything like that. It's not, it's all, look, if you don't agree with me, you must be terrible. If you see the world a different way, then you must be terrible. This is just another tool in their toolbox to take away traditional values and to undermine those who might not necessarily agree with the politically correct attitude of the day. Because in my mind, if you go to a school, and I don't care public or private, this stuff should have no place. The only flag that should ever fly over any publicly funded building, be it an educational institution, a police station, town hall, fire department, OPP, are the national flag, the provincial flag, in the case of municipal buildings, the municipal flag, and that's it, unless they have a dignitary who is coming to visit, and then there's an etiquette and a protocol about, let's say, if the president of Chile were to come by and want to visit City of Ottawa, well, okay, it'd be appropriate to fly the Chilean flag. But that's the only exception. Other than that, forget it. Or if the monarch comes or the pope comes, okay, but you get what I mean. It's not a place to virtue signal, and neither is the classroom. And yet they make a habit of doing this, whether it's pride, whether it's climate change, whether it's, if you don't think their way on global warming or on, whether somebody should get a vaccine or not, or any of this stuff, none of that has any place in the school board. And I find these petitions, first of all, I've never seen a petition that actually worked. So I'm not worried about it from that perspective. But the fact that people would even think this way is what I find more troubling than the petition itself.
Okay. So I'm just thinking as I'm listening to you, Nick, and in general terms, I agree with you. But as usual, I want to drill down on this a little bit deeper, because there's I think what we have presented to us today, for a number of reasons that I want to get into just a little bit, if you'll bear with me for a minute or two, is it's a bit of a false dichotomy. The assumption is that it's appropriate, or the assumption is that the Catholic School Board is celebrating heterosexual relationships. It's recognizing them. It's affirming them. It's promoting them, etc. And not doing the same thing for homosexual relationships. And I could see to a degree that's true. Whether it's right or wrong, I'm not commenting on. I have my personal views, but that's not the purpose of that's not what I'm trying to get across to our listeners right now. The point I'm trying to make here, that I would make, is the problem, and this is kind of an interesting way of looking at it. The problem, as I see it, isn't actually so much that the gay community is upset because it's not is not being treated equally by Catholic schools. And I would like to say probably that's not the case in all Catholic schools. But if that community is not being treated equally, the problem or the solution to that, and I think that this is true from a Catholic perspective, even though, I'm not Catholic, so I have no reason to be saying this other than my assumptions, okay? But it just seems to me that the appropriate response is not to embrace homosexual relationships, but to reintroduce to Catholic schools the principle of modesty, the principle of dignity, the principle of abstinence, if you will, and the reservation of sexual relationships to marriage. And the question is, and I remember a few years ago there was a case in Ontario where a young man sued the Catholic Board of Education in his community because he was gay and he wanted to bring a gay friend to the prom.
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay. But the question I'm asking myself is the problem that the Catholic school is not letting a gay guy bring his gay partner or gay friend to the prom? Or is the problem that the Catholic School Board is holding a prom in the first place? Because I could tell you, in a Jewish high school that's religious, okay, not all Jewish high schools are particularly observant, but in a religious and an observant Jewish high school, there ain't going to be no proms. So it's not a question of gay versus non-gay. It's not a question of heterosexual versus homosexual. It's a question of is any kind of sexual relationship or the affirmation of any kind of sexual relationship or intimate relationship, even if it's just an affirmation and it's not, people are not engaged in a physical activity, is that an appropriate thing for the school to be indulging in? And I know in our culture everything revolves around sex, etc. But really, am I really off base when I ask, isn't that the real problem here, Nick?
No, of course, that's a big part of it. The reason why I took the tack I did was because while I completely agree with you on the points you raise, it's not that it's too late and the horse is already out of the barn, but I think you have to draw a line in the sand somewhere. And you have to say this far and no farther. And I think the Catholic School Board has already crossed those lines in the ways that you're mentioning. and to go even further than that. I mean, what's the point of calling it Catholic if it doesn't at least support Catholic doctrine? And whether people like it or not is not the point. It's not, the church is not a social organization with religious overtones. It is a religious organization with social overtones, and there is a huge difference. And if you don't want your children taught what the Catholic Church holds to be true, then don't send them there. You do have alternatives. You can do everything from homeschooling to start your own school to sending them to public schools. You don't have to go to a Catholic school. So why do people get upset when the church says, sorry, we're not flying the pride flag, and we are not going to recognize June as Pride Month? I mean, it's not saying that those people who celebrate that are less than human or you don't deserve the same rights and freedoms as everybody else has. That's not the issue here. What is at issue is standing up for what you believe in, whether it's popular or not. And that's what one of the big problems I have with some of the Catholic bishops that run these school boards and so on. The Council of Canadian Catholic Bishops has really kind of dropped the ball here, not only here, but in a lot of other areas too. And when it comes down to it, there are a lot of other people within the Catholic system. We have Muslims, we've got Hindus, we've got everybody. If you want to come to a Catholic school, you're welcome to come. What we don't do is we don't accept the fact that you want to change the church or its teachings from the inside. Like if I were to go to, let's say, a Jewish synagogue as a Catholic and say, by the way, guys, to make me happy, you got to say the rosary. I'm sorry, that's not part of the Jewish tradition. That's not part of the Jewish faith. So for me to insist on that is not only an insult to the Jewish faith, it's demanding other people change to suit me instead of just taking from it what it offers that I can learn from and using that in my own daily life. And this is the part that just, I'm sick and tired of seeing this kind of thing. And it doesn't happen just within religious institutions. This happens in immigration. This happens in the Department of Defense. This happens in the economy in general, where people come along and demand change because it's not the way it was where they came from. Well, you're not where you came from. We don't do things that way. And I think it's about time that people started to say, wait a minute, to be Canadian or to be Jewish or Catholic or Hindu, this is what it means. And if you want to walk through those doors and join us, you're more than welcome. But leave your biases outside. Take what you can find that has value, and then, everything else just leave there.
I naturally agree with everything that you're saying, Nick, but it leaves the door open to the question of whether or not it's appropriate in the circumstances that you've just described to continue to provide public funding for Catholic education. And I raised that question with a certain amount of trepidation because certainly in the past, I have been a strong advocate of providing public funding for Jewish education. And, maybe the time has come to revisit the funding model for Catholic education. I'm not saying that there shouldn't be some consideration for the fact that a significant portion of the population in Ontario is Catholic and that they pay education taxes and ought to have access to those taxes to fund Catholic education if that's where they're sending their children. I think that's, in principle, a very strong argument to make. But along with that comes the strings that are attached to the money. And I'm not entirely certain that I've sort of hit on the right kind of funding formula that respects